Hi, Zizaran here with another video for the upcoming Crucible League, and this is a collab with none other than the Minion Master, Ghazi. If you're not familiar with Ghazi, he does everything with minions. And today we're bringing you a really solid minion build specifically aimed at beginners. So this is Dominating Blow. It's really good, and now we're gonna have Ghazi talk a little bit about who the build is for, how it works, and stuff like that.
Hey guys, Ghazi TV here with the collaboration with Zizaran on the build guide for the Dominating Blow League Starter character. Thanks again, Ziz, for having me. Appreciate that. This is a Dominating Blow Necromancer, which is excelling on the very fact of being a league starting character. And it's very important to stress how much of a focus this build specifically has towards league starting. Now, the build basically requires next to nothing to bring you from the start of a league into red tier maps, as well as being capable of handling the endgame initial pinnacle bosses. However, the build is not that good at bossing. It will take some time to kill the enemies, and mainly this is because of the mechanical nature of Dominating Blow. However, the build brings a lot of tankiness since it is forced to be in melee range with the way this build is played. Therefore, it requires to have a lot of tankiness and mitigation to be able to handle taking a hit or two without panicking. This allows the build to be very comfortable versus these initial endgame pinnacle bosses, even if they might take some time to kill. With a new addition of the Vaal Domination ability, we're going to be able to have a little bit more help with damage output, especially versus endgame bosses, but also, most importantly, to further scale our clear speed in general when it comes to the harder red tier maps. Since we are not dealing damage, our minions are, but we still need to hit enemies to make sure that our minions get summoned. And the way this mechanic works is pretty straightforward. So there's two different ways of summoning minions through Dominating Blow, or rather three. The normal initial base method is to just simply kill something with Dominating Blow. A killing blow with that ability will spawn a Sentinel. A killing blow or a death of a minion that has been recently hit by the Dominating Blow will also be providing a Sentinel spawn for you. And the third way is that there is a 25% chance to summon a normal Sentinel of dominance on hitting a unique monster. And this is why endgame bosses will have a little bit of a ramp up time, and also why it's so important to have high attack speed. So what are these Sentinels and how do they work? The normal Dominating Blow ability will allow you to summon up to 9 normal Sentinels. And it will also allow you to have 3 magic Sentinels and 1 rare Sentinel. Do keep in mind that the Vaal version of this allows you to basically ascend or upgrade 3 of them, which will separate them from these caps. And there you'll be able to get another one of whichever you ascended. So the normal Sentinels is essentially when you're hitting a unique enemy, or if you're spawning one that way, or if you're killing or getting a killing blow on one that's been hit recently on a normal monster, they will summon normal Sentinels. The magic Sentinels, however, is the exact same process, but you're doing so on a magic pack of blue enemies. These magic Sentinels will actually inherit the modifiers of the magical pack enemy that you just killed. Same thing goes with a rare Sentinel. Once you've killed or summoned a Sentinel through hitting or killing a rare enemy, that rare Sentinel will inherit the modifiers from that rare enemy. And this is what makes Dominating Blow such a cool build to do when it comes to clearing maps. Say you're killing a rare enemy that has a juicy aura that is increasing the threat levels of the enemies around them. You will now have that rare Sentinel having those modifiers, scaling you and your minions, either defensively or offensively, and doing excessive amounts of damage. And then with the Vaal version, you're now able to ascend that one to be bigger, badder, worse, and it's crazy. It's just a big bad wolf in the army running rampant across the field. Pros and cons to this build is quite straightforward. You'd rather not face tank bosses too much if you can avoid it, and therefore we're going to have a large set of army of minions covering our asses by simply being able to taunt them blind through the help of ghastly eye jewels. The build itself is not really a good bosser, as I mentioned, but instead it excels on the clear speed when it comes to comfortability without requiring a ton of gear. Outside of that, this build is going to go from a generic physical damage approach, or leveling with Absolution if you so will, but it is fair to say that this build can level with Dominating Blow as early as level 28 to 30, It is not something I would strongly recommend. I'd rather stick to Absolution for the leveling part of this kind of character due to that being vastly faster. But I do prefer to level with the ability I'm supposed to use for the in-game version of the actual character, and this build brings that capabilities or possibility for you to do as well if you so choose to. It is also important to point out that we are going to go poison with it, and due to the nature of the current meta of Path of Exile, going poison can sometimes be very expensive. It doesn't have to be, and that's where this build comes in. We're going to be using a chance to poison support gem, which provides us with 40% chance to poison on hit. Now we're going to need another 60%. This is achieved through the Ghastly Eye Jewels. This can, in many cases, be extremely expensive. But the way the Dominating Blow build is doing this is to make sure that our jewels have a life modifier and then the poison on hit chance, and that's it. If you have the desire to get some extra damage, there are cheap options compared to the meta of going something like the SRS builds, which demands that you have added flat chaos damage to them. Unlike those type of builds, the Dominating Blow doesn't need to think about that, and having added flat physical damage works the exact same way for the poison approach for them, which is something that does not work for the other builds, making these jewels considerably cheaper than the counterparts. The build guide is in a written format with a build gameplay video linked in it as well, and it's all linked in the descriptions below, of course. The written guide will cover everything in detail if you do prefer to read a guide that way. There's going to be a lot of information in terms of leveling, the gem links, and everything you might need, and gear suggestions, how to craft certain gear, modifier priority list, you name it. Another thing to point out is that if you ever need any help with a build like this, you can always swing by the Twitch channel. You can always ask in the Discord server for any help, as we're covering any type of questions that anyone might have for any of my builds on a daily basis every day of the year.
This is Path of Building. If you're not familiar with it, please go click here and you can get a lot more info. But it's the normal like step-by-step, so it's easy to follow leveling. And do remember that Ghazi has a very in-depth full guide for this on PoE Vault, and we'll link to that in the description down below, especially if you like text-based things. So it's pretty easy to follow. And the same with the skills. You can see here that everything's based into different skill sets with like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. It's very easy to follow the leveling process, and definitely something we recommend for new players. And what's really good, and if you look at the gear, this actually gets a lot of damage, like even as much as 3 million on very basic stuff. Everything here is very, very achievable for a new player. It works great with just rares early on, and there's some cheap uniques you can pick up like a Tabula and Darkness Enthroned that'll be available in the first few days very easily, and these will give you a big damage boost for the build. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed the collab with Ghazi, and if you're playing this build and you're running into any issues, go by Ghazi's channel and ask him for help. Literally the king of minions. He's going to be playing a minion build himself, so any problem you run into, he'll be able to help you out with. So very strong build, gives you a strong start of the league where you can make a lot of currency and you don't have to spend a crazy amount on this build. So if you're a new player and you're looking to try out minions, this might be the build for you. So we'll link to all of Ghazi's stuff. Make sure you go give him some love. And I hope you guys enjoy collabs like this. Let me know if you do. Love if you like the video. But more importantly, try to die less than I do.